Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ben, and in this episode of the Smoking Hot Confessions BBQ podcast, we're chatting with the closest thing to royalty in the Australian barbecue scene. Hey family, I hope you're well wherever you are and you got that thin blue smoke rolling. Today is super cool. As I just said at the top, we do have barbecue royalty here with us today. We've got Paul Reitmier from Silver Creek Smokers, and he has built some of the most iconic smokers on the scene, and he's actually been in the scene since before the scene was a scene. But I'll explain a bit more about that a bit later on. First of all, we just got a couple of announcements to run by you. The first is that Barbe Con is coming. Yes, Smoking Hot Confessions is going to be putting on the world's first virtual barbecue conference. It's coming up in June, on the 26th and 27th of June this year. It's going to be a full weekend. We're going to be bouncing around the country. We're going to be jumping into the backyards of various pit masters, pit builders, rub manufacturers, pretty much anything. Any angle on the barbecue scene, we're going to be in there, and we're going to be beaming it to you in your lounge room. So the Saturday is going to be all about cooking. The Sunday is going to be all about barbecue businesses. So make sure you keep your schedules clear and keep an eye out on the socials, because there will be some more information coming out about that over the next couple of weeks. The second announcement is, if you're just at the beginning of your barbecue journey, do head on over to smokinghotconfessions.com, have a bit of a click around the website. We have a free ebook available for you. So the pop-up window is going to appear. You can put your details into that and we'll shoot that out to you. It's the Beginner's Guide to Real Barbecue. It's everything you need to know if you're just getting into barbecue, and it is a pretty decent book. It actually just picked up second place for written material at the NBBQA Awards just last week, so that's really cool stuff. Next, if you're watching this video live, that means you're already in the Smoking Hot Confessions barbecue community on Facebook. And if you're listening to this later on, if you're not there yet, make sure you head on over and join us. It's the Smoking Hot Confessions barbecue community, and we like to do the live podcast recordings there, because then people can post comments and questions and things like that for our guests, and we can have the guests answer that towards the end of the show. And it's also just a really nice place to hang out. The internet can be a little bit of a funny place sometimes, but we keep that community really clean, really good. It's family friendly, and it's all about barbecue, which is sometimes a bit of a nice relief in these Facebook groups. If you are watching this on YouTube, do give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit that little notification bell. If you're watching it on Facebook, it's a like, it's a share, it's a comment. And if you're watching on IGTV, it's a cute little love heart and a follow. And of course, if you're listening on a podcasting app, particularly if it's Apple Podcasts, do give us a 5-star rating and review, because that would really help us out. Okay, now as I did say at the top there, we do have Paul Reitmier from Silver Creek Smokers. Now, he started building smokers in 2005, and as a point of reference, the ABA didn't actually start up till almost a decade later. So that sort of gives you a bit of an idea of just how OG, if that's a term, how OG he is. I'm not sure that's an adjective. I think I just made that up using it as an adjective, but we're going to go with it. So he's now blacksmithing and fabricating a whole range of different from stick burners to custom trailer pits, commercial and restaurant fit outs, and he's also a huge fan of classic Volkswagen. So I think we're gonna sort of cover the gambit today. We're going to be talking barbecue, classic cars, welding, all sorts of different cool stuff. But I think that's probably about all that you need to hear about this from me. I think it's time we get Paul in here.
This is the internationally awarded Smoking Hot Confessions Barbecue Podcast with your host, Ben Arnott. How long's it been since your last confession?
Good afternoon, Paul. Welcome to the confessional, my friend. Thank you for joining us.
How are you, Ben? Pleasure, mate. Pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Mate, I want to say thank you to you. It's not a regular opportunity for us to be able to get someone who is so steeped in history in the barbecue scene in Australia, such as yourself, on the show. So this is a real treat for us. So thank you back to you, my friend.
No, it's like I said, it's been a roller coaster ride when I first started. I suppose looking back to when I started barbecuing was probably when I was a kid with the old man, the old man will sort of say to me, get the barbecue going, so I'd be out there cutting the wood, that sort of stuff, getting the fire going. We're always cooking over wood and charcoal and stuff like that. So I sort of started at a young age, and, lighting fires is huge for me. There's something about fire that it's just, it's intoxicating, to be honest with you. And I'm sure a lot of your listeners now would agree.
No doubt about that at all. I dare say there are quite a few pyros watching right now with us.
Yes, yeah. I could have, I could have copped a few beltons for lighting fires that I shouldn't have when I was a kid. But anyway, so I just sort of grew from there, and then obviously did my trade, which is fitting and turning, which is that's my trade. And then I did tool making for 2 years, and then I did an apprenticeship in a sort of press tool, metal stamping factory for 10 years. Very old, we used to use, big presses, big draw presses for the military, for the war and stuff like the big shell drawings and stuff like that. All the casings, this place had wooden PowerPoints, it was seriously old and a lot of old machinery. And that's sort of where my love of fabrication came from, I guess. Anything to do with welding, bending, fabricating, rivets, chain, all that stuff, that's where it sort of grew, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, right. Wow. Right, so you've been manufacturing, you've been fabricating for some time now.
Yeah.
You started building smokers commercially in 2005, from what I could read on the website. And that's nearly a decade before the ABA started. So can you take us back to that time? So what was the barbecue scene like in 2005? I mean, that's 16 years ago now.
Yeah, 2005. Well, actually, I started. I was making these things called they're like little mini smokers, and I used to go down and purchase these little 20-gallon drums down in. It was near Laverton in Melbourne. And so I was building those, sort of early 2000s. And that was sort of like, you had your heat on one side and just your meat on the other sort of thing. There was no firebox, there was no offset. So I made those for a couple of years, and they went all right, actually. And then there was sort of nothing around, as in smoking meat, pre-2005, I mean, it was very hard to get brisket, let alone a smoker. So an offset, so a stick burner, So just researching a lot of the American stuff, and I came across a guy who absolutely just blew my mind. It was just like, wow. It was just they say light bulb moments. It was a lightning strike moment for me. And that guy is David Close from Close Pits. And to me, he's like the godfather of building pits. I mean, his stuff was it just blew me away. I was just like, wow. And that was it, mate. I knew where I was destined to be, So I spoke to him, I called him up, and basically told him who I was. And he's a character. I'll give him, maybe call him eccentric a little bit. And he was sort of a bit baffled why, a young guy from Australia was calling him. And then I explained to him why, and we, chatted a few times after that, and it went from there.
So I take it David's from the States then?
David's from Texas, yep. I mean, he builds anything from semi-trailer smokers, which is just, it's so over the top. And that's sort of why I just, I sort of fell in love with his work, And after seeing that, I decided to build a couple of small pits and see how they went, which was pretty dismal. So I've actually still got the first one I ever built. It's in my backyard.
Really?
No one's ever seen that one. That's I wouldn't call it rough, but it's had a lot of changes over the years, but it was my first attempt. And And then obviously I built the Jack the Ripper pit, which was my first trailer. And that was sort of 2005. Yeah, around that sort of time, 2004, 2000, it was around there. And yeah, that's sort of how it started, you know, and just obviously cooking. I mean, I love cooking. I don't cook for myself. Probably like a lot of people don't barbecue for themselves. They cook for other people. That's what I do anyway. I never barbecued for myself. So just for the love of cooking in general, yeah, mate, it was just, you know, it was just the way to go. So that's how it started.
Yeah, nice.
Much. Yeah.
So
it was slow though. It was a very slow undertaking, as in trying to sell these pits. I remember I used to light a smoker up and drag it out the front of my house, and have a little sign, you know, smokers for sale. And so, you know, on a sort of semi-busy road, there'd be a pit smoking out in the street, and it was put me little flies there, and I'd sort of wait near the window and see if anyone stops. And yeah, it was yeah. But that's how it's, you know, because there was just nothing like it in this country. People didn't understand what they were, you know.
That was what I was going to ask. I was going to say, like, did anybody know what it was that you were doing, that you were building? I mean, because
No.
when I was 26, 27 at that time, and I had no idea what low and slow was.
Well, I used to follow the barbecue scene in America, because obviously, I mean, even in Europe, there wasn't even a barbecue scene in Europe. That only happened over the last, from what I could gather, in the last, you know, 5 or 6 years. That's come big over there, you know. There's nothing in England. I mean, obviously Germany are known for, you know, for smoking their meats, but I'm talking like American style.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
So it's and then so to sell them, I went to a few dealers, as in like barbecue shops, and they wanted nothing to do with it. So I thought, all right, I'm on my own with this. I won't mention the company. They're quite large names in the game.
Yep.
But yeah, they were just like, nah, there's no way we're going down this line. And I was just like, okay. So I basically said to my wife, I said, I'm on my own with this. And yeah, I went quite a few years without making a wage, a long time, trying to get it up and running and putting the word out, you know. So a lot of sacrifice to get where I am. A lot of sacrifice. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't doubt that for a second. If I can just sort of take you back just a little bit, how did you actually get introduced to low and slow? How did you find out about low and slow? Did you go on holiday to America and discover it that way, or what's the story there?
No one introduced it to me, to be honest. No one actually showed me anything about low and slow barbecue or about brisket or any of that sort of stuff. I just discovered it myself. Like I said, David Close was he was my main man, and obviously I was looking at the stuff he was doing, and just a huge inspiration. And obviously, people with his smokers were putting on barbecues and sharing their photos and stuff like that. You know, the internet wasn't. I mean, 2000 back early days. Yeah, there's nowhere near as much information as there is now. Yeah, so that's basically how I got introduced to it, really. So, if anything, I'd say David Close. You know, so I've got a lot of respect for that man.
Yeah, yeah. So
and
were there?
And then obviously, sorry, man?
I was just going to ask. So what were the competitions like back then? Were there any, or was it sort of just
not here.
or?
Over there, yeah, I used to follow guys like you know, Chris Lilly and Tuffy Stone and Paul Kirk. Paul Kirk is another one of my go-to guys. He's just a legend, you know. Not sure whether you've heard of him. there's Chris Lilly, and then there was guys like, Big Bob Billy and, Big Bob Gibson. Barbecue Pit Boys were just starting out. I remember they used to do little cooks in their backyard with a home video camera. It was just like, so I was following those guys. Obviously, Lil Muir was a big fan of him, and even John Mueller was a big fan. Cooked with some guys like Ed Mitchell and from North Carolina. That was good fun. But yeah, just basically those sort of guys was who I was following at the time. There's a lot of other guys I used to follow, and they're sort of gone a little bit by the wayside. But yeah, I used to follow the scene quite a bit, the American scene, the barbecue scene. So yeah, it's actually one, I'll show you this book I bought in. This is, these sort of guys, I don't know if you can see that. Where's my camera?
They Were Smoking is the name of the book there that you're holding up.
Yeah, have a look at that. Have a look at those guys. That's what barbecue's all about. They're just, and that's from Billy Bob Billy, But that's a really good book. Love this book. And like I said, Paul Kirk, I don't read a lot of books, but Paul Kirk got me into some really good barbecue sauces and just some techniques. I think he uses a couple of close pits as well.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Nice. Yeah. Now, to my understanding, a particular point where the low and slow scene kind of shifted here in Australia was the Carnivores Ball down in Melbourne, which I understand you had that you were quite involved with. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah. We did the first barbecue event in. Sorry, that pen mark kept doing that. It was a big first barbecue event in. Where was it? It was South Australia, and we had 4 teams, I think. So we went up there and we catered and sort of helped organise the teams. Chris Gavin, do you know Chris Gavin Brown?
From Western Australia?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. He's he's been in the scene for a long time. He's behind the scenes sort of guy, but he's been in it for a long time. And he was up there and he organised it as well. And yeah, that was the first one. And then we did St Kilda, which was another barbecue event, which got a few more teams involved. That was good. And I met Jess sort of in between those times. And she had some other projects on the go. I think there was another couple of guys, Red River Barbecue, I think. They were sort of around doing some really good stuff. And then me and Jess got together and we thought, why don't we do a barbecue event? And that's how sort of that came about. So we did a couple of years, which was, I think, went really well. And then she sort of took off to the States, and she's flying high. She's doing some great work down there, She's, for the love of low and slow, she's up there, she's a good advocate for barbecue, put it that way.
Definitely. Definitely. Yeah.
And she's taken barbecue in this country, and she's been a big supporter of it and just a huge part of it. And then good old Jay came along a few years later, and that's history in itself, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. Yes, that's how the ABA was formed then.
Yeah, I think the first event was at where was it? Port Macquarie. That's sort of where it all started for Jay, I think. And yeah, so he dipped his toe in there, and the way he organises events, how could it not?
Yeah,
he's successful.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then meat stock is meat stock. It's very hard to beat that.
Got a project you'd like to work on with the SHC team? Shoot Ben an email on ben@smokinghotconfessions.com and let's have a conversation.
Alrighty, Paul. So we're into the second session now, and I really want to sort of hone in on Silver Creek smokers here. So we've already talked about the first smoker that you built in 2005. Now, was that for yourself or was that as Silver Creek? So like at what point did you say, hey, I'm going to turn this into a business and really give this a go?
I think when I built, sort of going back now, I think when I built I built a few small pits before the trailer. And then after I built the trailer, the Jack the Ripper pit, that's when I sort of started building them commercially. Well, commercially, is sort of a bit of a long stretch, but as in selling them to the public, so that was sort of when I thought, this is what I want to do. Sort of set up some machinery. I didn't go too crazy because I wasn't quite sure where. I always sort of knew in the end that it was going to take off. How can it not? It can't not take off, really. When you look at what it is, when you break it down to its bare bones, it's, fire, meat, smoke, booze, So that's basically, and it's a good gathering point for people. And that's what I sort of noticed after a while. It's bringing people together, It was bringing people together when I was cooking because people wanted to sort of get a free feed. When I was sort of learning the ropes, I sort of, it took a while for me to put my brisket out there on the socially, if you know what I mean. I just wanted it to be right. And so it was a lot of practicing. So, family, friends would come over and have a feed and, they'll give me how was it? Yes or no, good, bad, I think my biggest critic is my old man,
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he got me into cooking in a very early age, when I was a kid. And being part German, doing the sauerkraut and the Kranzkäse, the sausage and the speck and, all that sort of stuff. So that at a very early age, I got introduced to that, and yeah. So that's, and then getting back on topic, when I sold my first pit, it was to a guy down in, where was it? Oh, I can't remember now exactly. But yeah, basically, I thought, finally, I sold one. That was a very exciting day, that one. And I thought, yeah, this is definitely going to take off. And after, obviously, everyone knows the story, how long it takes and everything else. That's sort of basically when I knew when I sold my first pit. I thought, yep, that's it.
And so was that Jack the Ripper?
No, it was a small pit. It was like the little Lone Star pit that I built. It was one of those. And very excited. Needless to say, I have to admit.
Yeah.
And that was it. And then so we kept in contact for a while, and I don't speak too much anymore, but yeah, that was sort of that was the turning point,
Yeah, right. Yeah, and we've already talked about sort of the time it took for the scene to catch up to where you were. Basically, you were sort of 10 years ahead of the rest of the country, really. Was the demand for stick burners there from the start? Or were people sort of looking for you to make like some Australian style grilling barbecues? Were they looking for fire pits and then you sort of got them into offsets from there, or sort of where was the market at that time?
There was basically no offsets at all for quite a few years. I was making a few grills here and there. Obviously, I had to make something to try and get my business going. So I couldn't just focus solely on stick burners. So for a few months, I started sort of developing a couple of grills here and there and some fire pits. And obviously, I had a stockpile of these offsets, just sitting there, just looking at them, thinking this has to take off. It has to take off. And obviously, one guy can't, put the word out. You just can't do that. So you target sort of the restaurants. Obviously, they can sort of put it out, and there wasn't anyone doing much at all. There was Fancy Hanks was sort of very early on the scene. And I'm sure everyone's heard of Joel from JR, Smokehouse. So he was very early on the scene as well. So there was two guys doing low and slow, and I think between, sorry mate, it's the lower door. I think between the three of us, and also Lance was around as well. Lance from Big Boy, he was doing some stuff as well.
Yep.
And I think between us, we slowly pushed it out, and it was a very slow process. Even Kent from Fancy Hanks, he'll tell you it was a very slow build-up. A very slow build-up to the scene, I remember Kent used to come around and we used to hang around and just talk barbecue and, try and swap a couple of barbecue sauce recipes. And yeah, it was kind of cool in the early days, It was, I sort of gravitate towards things that aren't big, sort of thing. Oh, it's hard to explain. Yeah. So it was all new, and obviously watching the American scene, I was just like a sponge, just taking in all this information. And basically my wife said, you got to slow down a bit. I was just every night just watching YouTube, just researching, and yeah. So it was an exciting time,
Yeah. And how have you seen the demand change over the last 16 years?
Wow. I think probably around Carnivore's ball time, maybe a bit after that, pits were starting to get in demand. A lot of the restaurants were sort of dabbling in it. So I was even some sort of higher profile chefs were getting involved. I was dealing with a lot of those guys. The boys from Pateno did a lot of stuff with those guys. I used to follow that. I used to watch what those guys were doing, and they were very cool. What they were doing. Those guys in Sydney. And I think the restaurant scene was gathering momentum. And there wasn't really any comps on at that time, not like there is now. So I was a lot more backyard stuff. Mm-hmm. And then obviously there's a couple of pit builders that came on board. Then there was David Sprigg. Everyone knows Dave. He brought in the Yoda guys. It was funny actually. Everyone used to think that we used to hate each other. We were in like massive competition. It was absolutely the complete opposite. It's funny what people like to believe. But no. So he was bringing in Yodas, and it started to get some interest. And I was like, finally, it's starting to, pay dividends. It's if you want to make money, don't go into pit building. You got to do it because you love it. There's not a lot of. It's not a get rich quick scheme.
No.
It's a definite labour of love. From the burns to the cuts to the cutting off tendons and breathing in all that horrible stuff. And
wow.
Yeah, heavy work. It's really it's heavy work. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call it heavy industry, but it can be really taxing on your body.
Yeah. So, what would you say are some of the challenges that you've had to overcome with Silver Creek?
Some challenges. I think challenges. Getting them into restaurants, that was a challenge. That was a challenge. Getting them trying to get the restaurant scene involved. Some took to it really well, some didn't.
And how did you do that? How did you get them on board? Did you just invite them to your house and then cook brisket for them and say, hey, you could do this commercially?
Yeah, I had guys like, Paul Wilson, for example, come to my house and I'd cook him up platters of food and just say, look, have a crack, try it, see what you think, So I built quite a few pits for Paul. He's a great guy. So that was a challenge. Getting a place to build them was a challenge for me. Getting a place big enough. So I've moved probably 6 times in 7 years, just moving shit around. Oh, sorry, moving on stuff around, and that's been a challenge. Just getting guys to roll my big barrels, the really big smokers. That was a challenge to get someone to do that for me properly. Because if you don't get barrels rolled properly, it can be a real issue. There's a certain way you need to do it. So that was a bit of a challenge. But look, apart from that, keeping up my energy levels, that was a challenge. I have to admit. Yeah, I sort of, it was non-stop. It was 7 days a week.
Yep.
For many years, yeah.
So I take it that you're now a part owner of the V Energy drink line now?
No, I don't touch it now. I think I get enough caffeine from the tea. But no, I look, I have to admit, I really didn't look after myself, when I was just flat out, and I was eating badly and stuff like that, and so I sort of had to slow down a little bit, and my health sort of took a bit of a hit. But now it's sort of, I look back and how hard I pushed myself to get all this done. I had a never-ending vision of just pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing as hard as I could to get what I thought was the ultimate way to cook. Food is huge. Food is life. Food is everything. And cooking in this way for me was like, it's the ultimate respect for me personally. And that's why I loved it so much, I think. You look at it, animals die for what we do. And I think the way we cook barbecue, and we treat it with love and respect, it shows that respect, That's for me. That's me personally. And that's what I loved about it, for me.
Yeah.
And all, lighting the fires and, maintaining fires and feeding people and, all that sort of stuff. It's all a big part of it. So you put it all together and it's just like, it's a never ending quest.
Yeah.
To just get better at it and better and push it more and more and more.
Yeah, it's that pursuit of perfection, isn't it?
What's perfection? What is it? Perfection will send a man crazy. That's what perfection will do to someone, because perfection is a person who's never satisfied, because I try and push that perfection. It's just in me, and it's in a lot of people. And yeah, it can wear you down, especially on a bigger scale, and just to let things be and go, that's good enough. And when you sit there and you look at it, you think that's great, but there's something in the back of your mind saying, no, I can do better. And that's what drives you. That's what drives you to be better. So perfection is good. It can be, it can be a double-edged sword. And it's I think if perfection, if it's in you, then it's very hard to let go. You know, I think that's why I build my pits on my own, because I need to know how it's been built and the quality of the build. And I just don't think I can I just can't handball that off. I just can't do it.
Yeah, fair enough. I totally understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of those builds and the high level of quality and the perfection that you are pursuing, you have built some of the most iconic smokers on the Australian barbecue scene. So, two that I know of in particular are the. Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
No, thank you. No, I mean, I to get people to comment on what I do and what I love to do, and my creativity comes through in my pits. That's my vision. Yeah, I mean, like I've said it before, it keeps me going. It does.
Yeah,
it keeps me going. So yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Two of the ones that come to my mind are the one that you built for Black Iron Smokers and the one that you built for Texas BBQ. Could you tell us about those two builds, how they sort of came together?
Yeah, Adam Rothwell is a legend in himself. You know, he's an awesome guy, and he was actually very early on the scene as well. Adam, he came to the first Carnivores Ball, and he was just standing in the background. I remember it clearly. He was standing there, and I said, "How you going, mate?" He's sort of, obviously you know Adam, I'll be assuming.
Yeah.
And and you know, he sort of looks, and he said, "What are you cooking?" I said, "Oh, this and that." And I just sort of knew that this guy is going to be, he's going to be in the scene. You know, there's some people go to the Carnivores Ball or go to any barbecue event. They go there to eat, enjoy the night, and that's it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I knew he was going to be around for a long time. And so he got a small pit built off me, a little Lone Star, which he still has now, which is fantastic. And then he was doing a couple of barbecue competitions, and then he got more involved in it. And then he said, "I need you to build me a trailer." So I said, "All right." So I've built trailers before, bigger ones, smaller ones, but this was going to try and make a statement with it, you know. And it was big, it was heavy. You know, I mean, I think the firebox on it's 3/4 inch thick, you know, so it's a decent heavy pit. So he basically sort of gave me free rein of what to do, and I designed the warmer on the right hand side. So basically, you can take your barbecue out from your pit, you can put it in the warmers, and then you can serve off that, and it even kept your prep bench warm. So you know, it's sort of a bit of a working progress all the way around the pit. And yeah, so he designed all the stainless work, and he did an absolute amazing job on the awning, which is just killer, you know. So yeah, he basically said, "Build me what you think I would like." So I sort of, it was a big build, yeah. I have to admit, I'm very proud of that pit. It's I had a look at it the other day, and it's just like that. Yeah, it's nice, you know. I never credit my own work. I mean, you just don't do that, but just the way it finished and the way it looks, yeah, it's a nice pit.
It is, yeah, for sure. Now, does that one have a nickname?
Does that one have a nickname? Well, not really. No, Texas obviously is what is his name, and don't think he's given it a name. No, not like the gangster. That was that's Andrew from Black Iron. That was his idea. I'm not sure where he got the name from. I think I read the other day it was from me. I'm not too sure, but yeah, that was another pit that he basically gave me free rein on, and you know, he wanted to be as big as possible, as in the trailer, the whole thing. So it was sort of borderline. It was just on legal size for a double axle. So it was like 2.4 meters wide. I think it's 6 meters long or something like that. But the width, it's a very wide pit, and it's a real low rider. So I wanted to, any vehicle that I have, I like it down low, so a bit of a wee burner. So I said to him, we're going to drag it on the ground. And he was quite happy with that, as long as it didn't, hit the curb. And yeah, like a lot of rivets on it. And he sort of basically said, just do what you think, build it. What you would build for yourself, that's what I want. So bit of planning involved. It took a while to build that one, sort of off on it. And yeah, he chose the wheels, all the red trim and everything, which sort of fitted it nicely. And yeah, you've seen it. After he's finished with all the benches and everything else, it's and the awnings and everything. Yeah, it's just
it's pretty spectacular.
Some people call it the Batmobile, because it rides so low. And yeah, when I took it I had to take it for a test drive to get it weighed and all that sort of stuff. And driving on the freeway, it was just, I sort of pulled over and just had a look, see how it was lying, and it was like, this thing looks like a stealth bomber, So yeah, it got quite a few bips, and yeah, it was quite funny. But yeah, so he's rocking on that. He's built himself a really big pit, which looks absolutely amazing. And here's another one. He's right into the game, and he just, he's a big part of the barbecue community. A lot of respect for the guy. Mm.
Yeah, he certainly is, and he does a lot of miles with that pit too. I've seen him as far up here and as far down as Melbourne, and
he does. He drives it. He's very mobile with that pit, and considering it's a heavy pit, it sits low and it tows well. I mean, it'd be a nightmare if it didn't, but those sort of heavy pits have to tow well, have to tow straight. So yeah, that's how that pit came about, and between two of us, we sort of it's great when I get customers who want me to just do free reign on a pit and just say, look, you know what, I'll leave it up to you. I'll trust you with my pit. And you know what guys are like with smokers and girls, and it's like they're babies, they're all my babies, when I look at them. It's sort of sad to see when they drive off, to be honest. But yeah, so to have that trust, it's pretty cool, it's a big ask, and I've got a big, what's that word? Help me out.
Responsibility.
Responsibility. Let's go with responsibility. To if I get a customer who walks in and hasn't seen the pit, and they walk in and they get on their back foot when they've seen it, I can't ask for more than that. It means I've done my job, and that's what I aim to do with every pit, whether it's a little backyard pit or a big trailer pit. The quality doesn't go down. It just it stays at a level where if I was getting a pit made, I would expect that quality, and so would you.
Yeah.
So because people, like I said, people are proud of their pits. They like to show them off. They like to. It's a big part of their life.
You're listening to the internationally awarded Smoking Hot Confessions podcast with massive barbecue nerd Ben Arnott.
Alrighty, Paul, we're into segment 3 now, and this is the section of the episodes where we like to have our guest give some advice, give a bit of a lesson, share some tips. And we were talking off air before. We thought it might be a good idea if you sort of gave some pointers for people that want to maybe have a crack at DIYing their own smoker, that sort of thing. So I'll throw it over to you, and you can sort of share some wisdom with us.
Yeah, I'll look. Anyone who wants to build a pit on their own, I get a lot of guys sending me pictures and emails of their pits they've built. and just seeing what I think of them. And it's awesome, mate. I love it. I love seeing that, you know. They worry about whether it's good enough. But I mean, you know, you can smoke a brisket in a bin if you really want to, you know. So if you build a pit it's got a reasonable draw on it, which is a big thing that a lot of guys who buy pits or make pits, their draw isn't enough. So you're going to get smouldery wood in your firebox, or you have to leave your back door open a bit, which in turn you can't control the airflow and stuff like that. That's usually a big one. But yeah, look, I mean, if you're going to build a pit, first, sorry, what was where are we going? But we're going back to my suggestion on how to build a pit, or
yeah, just tips and advice for. That's all right. That's all right. Just some tips and advice for the DIYers out there.
Tips and advice. Tips and advice.
Maybe I'll start you off with a question then. You were mentioning draw before, yeah, and how draw is so important. How do you go about calculating draw?
I did it basically by trial and error in the early days. But the air that's getting sucked into your pit, the chimney has to be able to, like, in my mind, let more out than it can suck in. So you can always back it off, you know. But if the air getting sucked in, the chimney can't let it out, that's when you're going to get a slack draw. You can always slow a pit down. You can't speed it up to full capacity if your draw isn't right. And that's when you get, like I said, you get wood that won't burn properly. You get a bitter, sort of acrid taste in your meat. Like I said, that thin blue line, that won't be achieved if your pit hasn't got a draw in it. Simple as that. It'll smoulder. It'll be white and thick and black. You know, sort of that browny, whitey smoke, which you certainly don't want. You know, I mean, I know a lot of guys now, even in the States, you know, I speak to quite a few guys, you know, they're getting no smoke at all. They're running hot and fast and clean burn. No thin blue line. They're just sort of, yeah. And it's like hot and fast I'd never heard of hot and fast, you know, when I first started. And now it's starting to become quite popular, you know. So that means you're going to do hot and fast. You need a pit that can really draw. Otherwise, you just won't get those results, you know. So yeah.
So what are the key elements then to making that draw work? Does it literally come down to the size of the intake and the size of the exhaust, or is it to do with the height of the chimney, or what's the key elements to?
Height of the chimney is obviously longer the chimney, the harder the draw. That's it pretty much stands to reason. Me personally, I like putting my chimneys in the center of the pit, so you get an even draw across your pit. That's my theory behind it. So the air gets sucked right across the pit, and then out from the center of your pit. Then it goes out instead of doing a sort of vertical up like that. Working out your chimneys and stuff, that all sort of depends on how big your pit's going to be. You know, if it's a small pit, then you sort of have to. That's the thing. I mean, all that stuff comes from experience. You know, it's sort of hard to say what chimney to put on a pit that's going to be, you know, 2 meters long, and I'm not sure what the diameter is going to be. All that sort of stuff. It's sort of it's sort of hard to explain. If someone actually gave me a dimension, you know, I could probably help them out of what they need. Happy to do that. It's no problem. But yeah, so you got to just make sure that your airflow your chimney can handle your airflow that's getting sucked in. If you don't, you'll pretty much know soon you'll get a lot of smoke leaking out of your doors. That's a good sign of a slacker draw. When you get the smoke pouring out of your doors all the time, you can't seem to seal it. that's one giveaway. That there's not enough, that chimney can't take all that heat and smoke out, so it's got to go somewhere else, and that's out through your doors, because you can't seal steel on steel. It's just, it can't be done. You'll still get leaks, even if it looks like it's a press fit. You know, it's that tight of a fit. You'll still get the odd puff here and there. But you can get them tight, but like I said, if your drawer is no good, then you'll see more of that. You know, so a combination of the right drawer and a tight door, which is probably one of the hardest things to do in building a smoker, is getting that tight door. I've had a few sleepless nights over some big pits. It's just like, and it all comes down to how the barrels have been rolled, whether it's pipe or it's been, you know, rolled. Pipe can have a lot of spring in it too. And if your doors do ping, you can't just, I've heard of guys trying to run over the doors with the car and try and bend them, and you actually physically need to re-roll them or press them. You got to press it because it's got spring in it, and you'll never get that spring unless you actually physically bend it. I've heard all sorts, mate, of what guys try and do. You know, so pinging doors can be an issue with what do you call them? Amateur builders, I guess, or DIY, I guess you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Getting the barrels can be a problem to start off with. So you can go to your local fabricator guy and see if they can roll up a barrel for you, or if you're lucky to get your hands on an old gas tank, just make sure that it's been decommissioned.
Yeah.
You do not want to cut into a gas cylinder or a gas tank if you're not sure. So just don't do it. It's all good fun, mate.
Yeah.
Just come down one day and build a pit with us.
Mate, I would love to do that. I'm a teacher by profession, so I'm not necessarily super good on the tools, but I'm building an outdoor barbecue area here at the moment. And
I did see that.
I was cutting some corrugated iron with an angle grinder, and the disc exploded on me, and it terrified the hell out of me.
Yeah, I was actually rolling a barrel yesterday for a pit, and when you roll, you got to sort of over roll. I'm not going to go into the things of rolling steel, but it sort of flapped back and it pulled apart, and it slapped back on the roller. I mean, I've got big rollers, you know, so you're welding 1/4 inch stuff. And the noise that it made, it absolutely took my breath away, mate. It was just like, I had no idea what it was. And things like exploding discs can, just don't use cheap flap discs. That's all I can say. Yeah.
Look, that's probably a good point for us to start wrapping up this episode of the show. So I'm going to throw it over to you now. You can give some shout-outs and some thanks to whoever you'd like to say thank you to, and make sure you tell all the listeners and all the viewers where they can track you down on the internet.
Yeah. Basically, I just want to thank everyone who's supported me, who's built, who has bought a pit off me, and all the guys who I've catered for. It's a big barbecue family out there, and you know, I've really only heard nothing but kind words said about me, and that is, I can't ask for any more than that, to be honest. And to have my work sort of, I wouldn't say scrutinised, but heavily looked into. When I get a pit, when someone picks their pit up and they actually really have a look over it. I don't know whether I think people in general, they'll try and look for faults maybe. But yeah, it's just, it's overwhelming, to be honest, to have such a positive feedback from the general public, and guys like yourself. Like I said, it does keep me going, you know, and it emphasizes the fact that I think I'm doing something right, you know, and that's satisfaction to me. yeah, what can I say? It's just it's been a journey, mate. I feel very lucky, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, just make sure that you tell everybody now where they can track you down on the internet,
Yeah,
on the
absolutely.
social media, all that sort of stuff.
Social media. My social media, I'll be honest, does need a bit of a bump. I've got a lot of pictures and stuff that I keep meaning to put up on social media. For some reason, I just sort of, I just sort of fall back. I just fall a bit on the wayside on that. But yeah, I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and obviously my website. And that's sort of basically where you can find me, I guess.
And you just name Silver Creek Smokers across all of that?
That's it. Yep.
Awesome, mate. Awesome.
So, yeah.
Well, look, I just want to say thank you very much for taking time out of your day. I do realise that you are busy, that it is a 7-day-a-week passion for you and a business.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciate it. And as I said at the start, it's been a real privilege for us to have someone with your wealth of experience in the barbecue scene joining us on the show today. And I can tell you right now, we've got in the tens of dozens of thumbs up and little love hearts and all that on the socials on this live recording right now.
Yeah. That's I mean, look, I said if I can contribute in any way, it's like it's if anyone needs any answers or got any questions or queries, if they're building their own pit, they're more than happy to give me a call. I'm I've got nothing to there's nothing there that I can't if I can't help in any way, then I can't. But if I can, I'm happy to assist anybody. Yeah, no problems at all.
Beautiful, mate. Well, thank you very much for your time today.
No, pleasure. All right, guys. Thanks, Ben.
Alrighty, there you have it. That was Paul Reitmier from Silver Creek Smokers. What a treat. How good was that? He was in the scene before the scene was a scene. And now, I did say that at the start of the episode, and now we've been all the way through it. Now you can really appreciate what I was trying to express there. That was so good. That was so good. And I feel really privileged that Paul was able to share that time with us. So before I let you go, I need to let you know that Barbe Con is coming June 26 and 27. Keep that free. There's going to be some more information coming about that shortly. We're going to have a whole bunch of different presenters teaching you all about different aspects of barbecue, cooking on Saturday and businesses on Sunday. So that's going to be a real treat for you. If you're at the start of your barbecue journey, head on over to smokinghotconfessions.com. We've got recipes, we've got tips, we've got how-tos, and we do have that free ebook available for you as well, The Beginner's Guide to Real Barbecue. If you are on Facebook, do come and join the Smoking Hot Confessions barbecue community over there. It's the nicest little corner of the internet to be, and it's also where we do the live recording of these podcasts. So if you've been watching the video and you've been seeing the little comments come up on the screen, little questions here and there, if you're part of that community, then you can be a part of the show as well. And then, of course, however you are watching or listening to this, make sure that you do give us all the thumbs up and the likes and the shares and the hearts and the follows and all of that sort of stuff, particularly the 5-star ratings and reviews. We've had a couple of new ones come in. I'm going to give them a shout out in the next episode. It's been absolutely fantastic on Apple Podcasts. That goes a long way to helping us out. And if you hadn't seen in the socials there, just I think last week I put something up. In the last 30 days, we have been as high as number 6 for food in the American podcast charts. So that is just absolutely huge, and it does come down to those 5-star ratings and reviews, so we do thank you very much for that. And that is about all the time that I do have for today. So until next time, take care of each other and keep on queuing.
Thanks for listening to the Smoking Hot Confessions podcast. Head on over to smokinghotconfessions.com for recipes, tips, and Ben's own confessions.